Welcome to Know God Deeply with Precept, where we discuss how to dig deeper into the Bible and discover God's truth for ourselves. Because when we know God more deeply through His Word, we live differently. Let's dig deep. You are listening to the Know God Deeply podcast. My name is Adam, and today I'm joined by Corina, David, and Christina. Hey guys, how are you today?
What's up?
Hi, Adam.
Hey.
That what's up makes me think of some overused cliches or phrases. Sorry. But what's up there for a while was a very popular one. It's like, what's up? So tell me, what's an overused phrase or cliche that just kind of grates on your nerves?
I ain't gonna lie to you. Or the other one, to be honest, like both of those things, doesn't make any sense. Like, have you been lying to me? Are you not, to tell you the truth? That's the third one, right? I ain't gonna lie to you. Be honest, tell you the truth. Yeah, those drive me nuts.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I'll try not to use those with you, David.
What's up?
Yeah, just say what's
That
up.
one.
Next time I'm lying, I'll just tell you. It is what it is one that grates on my nerves pretty bad. Like,
Does it
is
really
what
mean
is.
anything?
It's not what it's not. Yes, thank you for that. That one bugs me.
It is what it is.
Right.
I don't know if this qualifies, but sleeping like a baby is one that will get me.
Oh,
Someone
they
who
don't
loves
sleep.
some baby. I always tell my
maddening.
husband it should be sleeping like your husband, because sometimes sleeping like a rock.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she'll be
I
a
like
baby
that.
that sleeps well. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. One that became pretty popular in the last decade or so and has really kind of become overused for me is mic drop. It's like this idea of, you finish a very dramatic dissertation or joke or whatever the case may be, and you have that mic drop moment. And it's really bad when the person actually says mic drop and then drops the mic. It's like, hey, that's
Yeah.
They call it out.
right. That's doubly bad. But the reason I bring that up specifically is I'm looking for a better phrase for that phenomenon, because at the end of Habakkuk chapter 2 that we discussed last episode, I feel like we have a little bit of a mic drop moment, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But first, let's do a quick kind of overview of what we've looked at so far in the book of Habakkuk. We are going through the entire book. Season 2 of the Know God Deeply podcast is titled, Where is God When Bad Things Happen? And so we started off with this perplexed prophet, Habakkuk, who sees evil and injustice amongst God's people, cries out to God, How long must I cry out? You won't hear me, and I've got to look at all this evil and iniquity around me. God replies, Oh, I'm doing a work. You're not going to believe it. I'm raising up the Chaldeans to bring judgment on my people. Habakkuk, it's like, whoa, that's even worse. Chaldeans are even worse than us. How can you even look at them, much less use them? And are they just going to mercilessly kill nations forever? God responds, wait for it. Judgment is coming for him who heaps up what is not his own, who gets evil gain, who builds by bloodshed, who takes advantage of others, those that worship idols. It's like, instead of the one true God, those people are going to get their just due. And kind of the centerpiece of chapter 2 is verse 14 that says, For the earth will be filled with the knowledge and glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And so we have this beautiful imagery of this saturating of the glory of God over all things, over all of his creation. And then the chapter ends in verse 20. Is to me that kind of mic drop moment that I'm looking for a better phrase for. It says, But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him.
Yeah. I see that. That's good.
Yeah. And so God is finished speaking. And now we move to chapter 3. And we get to see now, is Habakkuk going to have more questions? Because we've seen this kind of pattern, right? Of Habakkuk asks a question, God responds. Habakkuk has another question or needs clarification, and God responds. And now we're going to see where's Habakkuk, where's his heart, what's his attitude like in chapter 3. So we're going to read the first 15 verses of this chapter. David is going to read for us. So, David, would you like to go ahead and read those verses?
All right, so let's look at verse 1. A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet, according to Shigionoth. O Lord, I've heard the report of you, and your work, O Lord, do I fear. In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah. His splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light. Rays flashed from his hand, and there he veiled his power. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed at his heels. He stood and measured the earth. He looked and shook the nations. Then the eternal mountains were scattered. The everlasting hills sank low. His ways, his were the everlasting ways. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Lord? Was your anger against the rivers? Or your indignation against the sea when you rode on your horses, on your chariot of salvation? You stripped the sheath from your bow, calling for many arrows. Selah. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. The raging waters swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and the moon stood still in their place. At the light of your arrows they sped. At the flash of your glittering spear. You marched through the earth in fury. You threshed the nations in anger. You went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. Selah. You pierced with his own arrows the heads of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me, rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret. You trampled the sea with your horses, the surging of mighty waters.
All right. So this feels like maybe a shift. So tell me what you think stands out in Habakkuk's prayer here.
I mean, the very first verse seems to be an indicator. This is the narrative has stopped, or the typical narrative, the main narrative stopped, and now this is a prayer, a response, and it's obviously poetic and somewhat vague and sometimes, but there seems to be a real shift. It's almost like poetry following the narrative. But he does call it. It's a prayer, and it's according to this word Shigionoth, which I have no idea. I don't think anybody does. There's speculations, but it could be music, it could be something else. But this is definitely a different feel, a different kind of genre here of literature.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, God really takes center stage in this passage. When I was going through and marking, and David, you did a great job kind of emphasizing wherever Habakkuk is speaking about God. Mm-hmm. But I mean, my page is just full of yellow triangles, which is the way I marked God, and pronouns for God. God is the focus of Habakkuk's final words in this book, which I think is important because, I mean, he's getting an answer to the question he's been asking, which is, God, where are you? And it seems like God's everywhere in this passage, which is a cool transition.
Yeah, same for me. I marked it. It's in every verse, sometimes multiple times in a verse. It's all over this page.
Yeah, and you talk about a shift, Adam. I think we see a shift in Habakkuk as well, and we see him move to this place where he is confident and full of faith. I think what really strikes me about him is he just takes God at his word. God gave him an answer, and he said, yeah, I will believe you. And this prayer is kind of the overflow of that.
Yeah, that's good. And the in wrath, remember mercy line is really stood out to me because you see this language of God's ultimate power and what he can do. And yet in that, Habakkuk is reminding God and reminding himself as well that God is a God of mercy as well. Mm-hmm. And that's not a contradiction.
And I don't know if y'all have picked up on this as well, but it looks like I know we didn't read 16 and 19, the prayer continues, but it looks like this is the only request of the entire prayer. It's not a bunch of asking. It is ultimately a bunch of praising, except for this one in verse 2. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. But the rest of it looks like it is declarative, not interrogative. He's not asking God to do something. He is stating what God has done and maybe even what God will do in the future. But it's not a typical prayer. Like you would see him. He said he's going to wait for it, and it looks like he did. And now he's reflecting back to God.
So let's do a little comparing and contrasting. We've hinted at it a little bit of Habakkuk's former posture that we saw in chapter 1. Let's compare and contrast that to what we see now here in chapter 3. What do you guys see that are maybe similarities or differences?
Yeah, I think there is a huge contrast. There's, in the first chapter, he's asking why God is sitting on his hands. Why is he idly looking on? Why does he feel absent? He doesn't see God. He can't find God anywhere. And then in chapter 3, it's sort of like he sees God everywhere. In verse 3 of chapter 3, he says God came from, I don't know how to pronounce that, Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. It's sort of like Teman is south of where he is. It's sort of like he's saying God is in the north and God is in the south. And then you keep going and you see in verse 3, his splendor covered the heavens. The earth was full of his praise. So he's now in the sky and on the earth. You see later he's on land measuring the earth. He's on the sea, raging against the river. So God goes from being seemingly absent to being very, very active. And I just think that's such a cool thing to notice.
I think what's interesting is we see that Habakkuk knows who God is and he knows God's character throughout all 3 chapters that we're reading, right? It's not like he has suddenly met God and that's what causes his praise. It is, he knew who God was in chapter 1, and that was kind of the source of his questions and his doubt. And now he has moved to knowing God in a way that fills him with faith and fills him with confidence. And I think that begs the question of, okay, what happened in the middle? And I think it is a drawing near to God, right? He chooses to come before God with his questions and his doubts rather than allowing that to cause him to draw away. And through that, they have this beautiful interaction together, this beautiful conversation, this prayer, right? That's what prayer is. And it leads him to this place of praising God. And you're right, Corina, seeing God everywhere. And I think that is so beautiful. And there is so much that we can learn and take from that as well.
And not to beat it to death, but verse 4, chapter 2, verse 4, the righteous shall live by his faith. I mean, it's almost like a pivot in this whole book where, all right, I'm going to see it your way. I'm going to understand reality through your lens, right? And that lens is one of faith. And we find out later in the New Testament that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, things not yet seen. And so he's living that out. He's going to bank on that. And I think I agree. He didn't change like from, I don't know God to all of a sudden I know God.
Right.
It's almost like God awoke in him faith and deepened that trust so that he could, even in despite. So, we'll look at this in our next episode, but even in despite of this stuff, he's still going to live by his faith. He's still going to live by what he knows to be true. And yet somehow he can't even get a hold of it, but he's still clinging to it, if that makes sense. It's something that he can't get his hands around, but he knows it's there. He knows it's true. And so he's leaning into that. And I think it's kind of faith in it, by definition, doing it. But yeah, that's good. He didn't there wasn't a conversion in chapter 2, although the mic drop is pretty cool. Verse 20. I agree, Adam. Shut up is how I would translate that. The Lord is in the house. Shut up.
Yeah. And I think that's a great call out too, David, is that his circumstance has not changed, right? Everything around him is exactly the same. And God is going to send this judgment in the exact same way. But it is him and his faith that has changed.
Yeah.
I love the interaction, David, that you kind of drew out between what's happened, what's happening, and what's going to happen, and how all of these things matter in our relationship with God. When you're reading this passage, I think somebody mentioned it's clear that some parts of it are referencing past deliverances of God. You've got this reference to the sun standing still in verse 11, which calls us back to Joshua 10. And there's references that seem to evoke, imagery from the Exodus in that book. But verses 13 and 14 stood out to me as being maybe a future thing, something still to come. It says, you went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed, saying you saved your people, you saved your king. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. And that phrase, crushed the head, should, I think, remind us of Genesis 3, should remind us of God's promise to the serpent that there is going to be an offspring of the woman who's going to crush your head, who's going to defeat you. And so I think we see Habakkuk bolstering his faith, living by faith, by looking at what's past and saying God has been faithful, looking at what's going on now. God is here. God is working. And then also looking forward to what's to come. God is going to save. God is going to crush the head of the wicked. He's going to finish this work, maybe even in an eschatological sense, but in a future end time sense. So I love that you brought that up. There's all those things matter in our relationship with the Lord and in having faith.
Yeah, and a good pro tip, when you see a past tense in the Hebrew, it doesn't always mean it's in the past. One technique that the Hebrews would do is they would say something talking about the future, but with such certainty they would use the past tense verb. And so that's in another one. So you can't just use tenses of verbs to say, oh, this is past or this is future when it comes to Hebrew. Greeks are different. They're very, very, very literal, but the Hebrew has a more poetical feel to it. It's just a different kind of language, really. So,
yeah, for sure.
Good tip.
So we've talked quite a bit about Habakkuk himself, him growing in faith, him, as Corina said, bolstering his own faith. Let's talk about now the people around him. How might these words have prepared Israel to face the coming of God's judgment?
Yeah, I love someone brought up in wrath, remember mercy. It's an uncomfortable reminder that Habakkuk knows what's about to happen is in some sense an expression of God's wrath toward his people. It's an expression of its discipline for sin, that the Babylonians are not just coming as, oh, bad things happen to good people. The Babylonians are coming because God's people have sinned. And so he says to God and makes that request, in wrath, remember mercy. Don't forget that we're your people. Don't forget that, to come down and have pity on us. And then you see God personally come down. Like God has skin in the game.
Yeah.
He has a dog in this race. He is intimately concerned with showing his people mercy. And the way that he does it is by personally showing up for them. And I think I was thinking about kind of the New Testament equivalent to that is, of course, Jesus, that Jesus was God's way of personally coming to us, his people, wearing skin, becoming flesh and blood, taking on God's wrath so that now, as God's people, all we get from God is mercy.
Yeah.
We do get discipline for sin. It's in Hebrews 12, but you get what I'm saying, that God was able to take that wrath upon himself and show us mercy as his people. And I love that request.
And there's a sense there too. I was trying to look it up. I want to say it's in Samuel. David takes a census of all his people, kind of does some counting, and it's very clear from the text that's not a good idea. And so God's going to bring some judgment. And God gives David like two options. One, was it the plague or was it an angel? And he says, I want to put it in your hands. Knowing that wrath is coming, I want to put it in your hands because I know you are a forgiving God, and God does bring a wrath, but it's put to an end. It's shortened in this sense. So yeah, I think that is a good call out.
His wrath and mercy working together. We see that with David too. Yeah, that's awesome.
One of the things that I saw when I was studying through Habakkuk 3 and just checking out cross references. This is a psalm in one sense. And so there's 17, 77, 78. There's psalms that would recount the history of God. And it was always to bolster, encourage, maybe sometimes convict. those who are listening, but there is a sense here in which him praying this out in front of, if the people hear this, eventually they're going to read it, but to experience this prayer is to experience the history of God with his people and to remember. It's kind of like when Moses crossed the Red Sea, and then in Exodus 15, then he comes out with a song about it. The horse and the rider, remember, fall into the sea. We've made songs about it as well, but it was something that would have a cadence in the worship of the people, the history of the people, to remember, you know what, this is what God did. And God is faithful to that. And we can trust him. And so, yes, the Babylonians are coming. They're going to bring some judgment, but we know God is ultimately in charge. And I think that's one of the answers to what do I do when bad things happen? I have to remember who God is. I got to stick with what I know is true about God and let the other stuff kind of fall away. The unknown, let it just not and change me. Let it not over impact my heart and my thinking and my posture with God, but to stand firm on what I know to be true. And I think that's what he's doing in his prayer is he's kind of recounting the history of God. And as Corina pointed out very clearly, at the Exodus, y'all, if you don't know this about the Bible, the Exodus is one of the biggest stories of the entire Bible. It shows up over and over and over again. And in most of the time when it shows up, it's for reasons of remembering God does deliver. And so here's this again, yet another time he hits that drum. God's going to deliver. God's going to deliver. But in that wrath, please, God, be gentle. Remember mercy. Don't destroy us.
That reminds me, David, of I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but the Dayinu, the prayer that they'll pray the Jewish will pray at Passover Seder. And it is just this recounting of the Exodus story. And it's this refrain of, it would have been enough, God. It would have been enough if this was all you did for us. And I think our Jewish brothers and sisters are still so great at that, at celebrating and remembering what God has done in the past and the faithfulness. I think I read somewhere once that like a third of their year is spent in their celebrations and their remembrance of God. And you're right, David. What a great way for us to just remember God has done it before. God can do it now. God will do it again. Just like you're saying, Corina, the past, the present, the future. God is the same and he can do it. That's great.
Yeah, we as humans, we are forgetful people, right? Yeah. So we could learn to remember more. And that's what I love about this prayer is that Habakkuk is calling on the character of God. He's reminding God, not that God has forgotten, but we forget.
Right.
And so that remembrance is for our benefit. So let's talk a little bit about God's sovereignty that's displayed in this chapter. What aspect of his sovereignty maybe gives you the most hope right now? And why is that?
I love that nothing competes with him. When you read through these verses, disease, people, nature, the sun and the moon, nothing gets in his way. And so there's no limits on his sovereign power. There's no boundaries that he can't go beyond. And I know that's such a sovereignty is such a mind-boggling thing, because we can talk about it one side of our mouth and then the other side go, but wait, he controls everything. Well, does that mean me? Am I a robot? Am I, is it fatalistic? No, it's not. And I've been studying the Bible, for decades, and I cannot give you a black and white, here it is, other than it's both. It's both. Me and my activities matter, and God and his sovereignty matter. And when they meet in the middle, and it's a cloud. I can't see what's behind that cloud, but they meet and they're in sync. But I love, for me, just reading through all this, the different things he brings up that could have been competitors, that could have been roadblocks or challenges for him. Nope. None of them. So I love that. That gives me a lot of confidence in him.
Yeah. It reminded me so much of Job, reading through this, of when God speaks to Job and where were you at the foundation of the earth? And it just is this reminder of, not only is none of this competing with you, God, but like you created all of this. You are in charge of all of this. if all of that, then how much more me and my life? And you've got it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Isaiah 45, both light and darkness, both peace and calamity, these are all inside somehow mysteriously his domain. It's not like there is an opposing, equal enemy of God, yin and yang, that doesn't exist. There is no one that competes with him, not even Satan himself and all of his mighty demons added together don't compete. There's nothing, right? So yeah, I think that's, when we believe that about God, I think it changes our perspective, doesn't it? It does mine. It really changes the way nothing's taking him down. I can trust him.
Yeah, I think it is important, that relationship piece, Christina, that's so near and dear to your heart, that he is sovereign over everything. He is in control. He knows the earth's measurements, right? I just love that image of God kind of with a measuring tape. That's just what I picture. Just measuring the earth, just shaking the nations like like a sheet or something.
Mm-hmm.
He's in control of all that, but that would be a very frightening thing on its own if it weren't for the rest of the relationship piece, like you're saying, Christina, that if it weren't for God's good purposes for us, if 13 wasn't true, that he is going out for the salvation of his people, that's his purpose, then it'd be actually very scary to think about a God like this. But the reason it comforts Habakkuk and the reason it comforts me is that if God's purpose can't be thwarted, then his promises to do me good, I can trust him. I can stake my life on them. And that means that when things go from bad to worse, when trials are difficult and just keep going and going, there is an end of the story that is good, that has my good in mind and God's glory, and he's capable of bringing it about. And so for me, on a personal level, I think just knowing that God knows the end of the story and he is bringing history there is comforting.
So we talked about how we're forgetful, and we talked about how we need to remember God's sovereignty, his faithfulness. So are there some practical ways that we can do that, build that into a rhythm of our daily lives, of remembering his goodness, his faithfulness, his sovereignty?
I mean, what a gift God's word is, right? Let's start there. Just every example we get to read of God's faithfulness since the beginning of time for all of his people, every promise he has for us. I don't know that there is anything more powerful than that, just soaking ourselves in God's word and reminding ourselves of who God is. It sounds so obvious, but sometimes maybe we forget that God of the scriptures, the God who did all of these things for the people of Israel, for Moses, for Habakkuk, that is the same God that we have access to, who is on our side, who is our good father, all those things. And then if I can share another one from my life, a practice that has been really important for me is doing a daily examine every day. And that's an Ignatian practice. But basically what it comes down to is at the end of my day, I just spend time reflecting back on how the day went. And I just ask God to show me where he's been all throughout the day and where he showed up, and where he was faithful to me. And that practice has helped me not only to reflect at the end of my day, but be more aware of God throughout my day as I'm walking through it. And just remembering his faithfulness through that has been really important to me.
Cool. Do you just do that in prayer? Do you write it down, or how do you do it?
I do. Sometimes a little bit of both. Lately, it has been while I'm feeding my daughter before she goes to bed. That's the time I do it. So no writing, just talking to God while I'm holding her. Yeah, but sometimes I've had seasons where I write it down for sure, and then I can look back, which is great as well.
I don't know who said this, but somewhere I heard forgetfulness is the enemy of faith. And so, which tells us that remembrance is a companion to faith or an assistance to our faith. And so I think that's why, at least for me in my prayers, if I'm not disciplined and intentional to start my prayers with praise, then I find myself just asking and not really basing it on things I know to be true. So I think there's when I start with praise, that kind of forces my hand to say, why is he praiseworthy? What can I praise him for? What are some things I know that I'm about to ask him that can be built off the foundation of who he is, who he's declared himself to be or proved himself to be in my life. And so I think and we see that pattern, don't we, in the Psalms? A lot of Psalms are like that. You did this, you promised this, or this was what you did. And so now I'm going to ask you based on that truth. So yeah, I think that's, for me, it would be my prayer life needs to be intentionally designed with prayer. That doesn't mean every prayer has to be, Lord, I want to praise you, and then now I can get to business. It's like it's a password to get into the actual prayer. No, it really is a key part of the dialogue with God, and it's not for his information.
Yeah.
I'm not telling him anything he doesn't know, but honestly, it fuels my heart and my faith. So, yeah, if forgetfulness is the enemy, I want to fight it with remembrance.
No, I love that. I think, Christina, that gives me something practical to hang on to, your daily examine, because I have a practice of prayer journaling, and I have since I was 14, but I'll go through every so often and write check marks against things that I know God answered. And that way, cool. When I'm looking back over them, I see like, oh yeah, he answered here, here, and here. But on a weekly basis, sometimes since I've had my son, my prayer journaling is probably more a monthly thing. But there are so many ways that God comes through on a weekly basis that I want to find a way to remember that and even document it if I can. So I love that examine practice being one way to do that. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We end our conversations in the Word with a "so what," and it just felt like such a hard left turn from this beautiful practice of examine. So what is a way we kind of boil down what we've learned from the scriptures that we've studied. And I'll begin today with my so what, in that looking at Habakkuk's example, we see in chapter 2 that he hears quite a few hard things from God, this coming judgment. But there's also some nuggets of hope in there that we talked about, that the just shall live by faith and that God's glory will cover the earth. And it seems like in chapter 3 in this prayer that Habakkuk has really grabbed a hold of those hopeful things. And that's what I want to do. I have realized there's been times in my life where I have felt distant from God, and I've prayed the prayer, God, just be real to me. And I feel like sometimes the answer I get back is, are you, Adam, being real with me? Wow. Are you being completely transparent? Are you being honest about anything that you're struggling with or your doubts or whatever it is? Lay that all down, bring it to me. And I feel like that's where we're getting with Habakkuk here, that he's been humbled, right? But he's seen the sovereignty of God, and he's trusting in that, no matter how that might look. And so that's my so what.
Mic drop.
That was good.
Someone
we got to
had
come up with a better phrase. Listeners, if you got a better idea for what to call a mic drop, please let us know.
But I love that line of God be real with me, and God in response saying, are you being real with me?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a humble way to approach circumstances, to approach a relationship with God, is to say, Lord, I know you're not messing up. I know you're not confused. I know you're not, lost. I must be. Help me. Help me to find my North Star, my true way in you. I want to be open and transparent. The psalmist says, search my heart. Look around, kick things around, look in the dark corners. Let me know if there's any way I'm not being real with you. I love that, Adam. I think that's a wonderful approach to prayer. Wonderful approach to God.
David, you talked earlier about starting our prayers with praise. And I think sometimes we are just in a spot where that's not the most honest thing, right? That we can say to God immediately, at least. And so I love Habakkuk's example throughout this whole book of he starts with the hard, and he starts with the doubts and the questions and the where are you, God? but he does not stay there, and he allows it to move him to praise, right? He eventually gets there. And I love that movement. And I think that's my so what, is when I am in a place where, okay, I just need to be real and lay this down with God and be honest, to not allow myself to stay there, but to try to find this movement to where I can get to the praise and the trust and the confidence that we see in Habakkuk in this chapter.
It's interesting. He starts with the hard, but we get to this settled place, and he's no longer focused on his questions. He's focused on God and who God is. And that is similar to Job, as someone mentioned, where finally Job is spent after 38 chapters, and God just says, remember who I am. Remember who you're talking to. And after that, Job has nothing to say. And my so what, my takeaway is this is what I need. This is the heart check I need when I don't feel that God is real, when I am stuck in just a cycle of the hard questions of where are you, where are you, where are you? We need God to show up. And I feel like it's significant that he starts out with this theophany, this revealing of God in a visible way. God, in verse 3, it says his splendor covered the heavens. His brightness was like the light. I looked that up in the NIV, and it said God's splendor is like the sunrise. And then it continues, and there he veiled his power, or there was the hiding of his power. In other words, this isn't even the half of it. And look at how glorious it is. And that's what I need when I have lingering questions and lingering doubts. I need to behold God in his glory and be reminded of who he is. And I think this is a great passage for doing that if I need that, or if someone needs that.
I don't have much to add a takeaway other than the end of verse 2, "O Lord, do I fear?" Kind of a so what is, if I have a correct estimation of his worthiness, I should stand in awe. I should stand in fear. I should stand in tremendous amount of respect and honor. And so I think that, and then reading the rest of this prayer helped me in that. It reminded me, yes, he is fear worthy. Not fear to be scared of him, to be trying to hide from him, but one to be in complete and utter awe and respect and admiration. So I think that's my so what, Adam.
All right.
That's so good.
I love it. Maybe not quite mic drop level, but it was good. I enjoyed it. No, just
to be honest with you now, I ain't gonna lie to you.
To be honest, it was good. All right, guys, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for that. Listeners, we hope you've been encouraged. Be sure to follow us on our socials at precept.usa. And we'll be right back with our Take It or Leave It.
The Bible is a treasure trove of truth that can lead you into a deep relationship with God Himself. But how can you really dig in and discover that truth? Find step-by-step instructions on inductive Bible study in our How to Study Your Bible, a classic resource with over 1 million copies in print. You'll get equipped with practical skills to discover the truth of God's Word for yourself, because knowing God's Word means you'll know Him more deeply, and that will change your life. Get your copy of How to Study Your Bible today at precept.org.
All right, guys, we are back, and it's time for Take It or Leave It. Today, I'm going to share a Take It or Leave It. We are recording this in the fall. We are approaching the holiday season. So my Take It or Leave It is Christmas music, Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving. Take it or leave it.
I'll start, and I will take it.
Okay. Christina takes it.
November 1st. We're ready to go.
I love Thanksgiving.
I will respect Halloween, and then I'm done.
Okay.
That sounds so holy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Forget Thanksgiving, but Halloween.
Ready for Christmas. Thanksgiving is actually my favorite holiday, but I want the Christmas decorations up for it.
Okay.
Oh, so you have a tree up at Thanksgiving? Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Is it real or fake? That's another
It's
Take It or Leave It.
fake. I'm not a
It's
real
fake.
tree girl. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I have to respect Thanksgiving to the utmost. It's also my favorite holiday, and I can't do the mixing of decor. Can't do it. So it's all Thanksgiving until the day after Thanksgiving. Then it's Christmas.
Yeah. It starts with a Black Friday a shopping horrendous experience, right?
Yeah. We're so thankful. Now let's go spend all our money. Corina, you said Thanksgiving decor. Do you have like extensive Thanksgiving decor?
I have extensive decor in general. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Across the board. Across the board.
Yeah, look at her surroundings behind her. That's an actual shed, and yet it looks like my living room. It's really nice. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it as well, Adam, just because things get mixed up and confused, and I feel like Thanksgiving, America deserves her spotlight, and so let's wait. But I got to have a real tree. It's got to smell good. And so if I get it too early, there won't be any needles left on it by Christmas. So that may be the real reason why I wait.
Yeah. Good call. I'm leaving it. I don't want to mix holidays. It's like, hey, let's give each holiday its due time and attention. I get it from a retail perspective. I worked in retail for quite a long time, and you have, these holiday sections that when holiday's over, you just, whatever the next holiday is, you plug it in because you don't want to have to put general merchandise there and then replace it again. So I get that from that perspective. But for me, I'm not selling anything for my home. I'm going to wait and celebrate each holiday in succession. So there you go.
Christina, you're on your own. Sorry.
I'm on my own. And I'm okay with it. Me and my tree will be over here.
The leaves never fall off your tree.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. This has been fun. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Know God Deeply from Precept, a nonprofit Bible study ministry. For over 50 years, Precept has equipped people just like you in nearly 190 countries to discover the truth of Scripture for themselves. You can get to know God more deeply through Precept's inductive Bible study resources. And when you know God more deeply, you'll live differently. To discover more about Precept and check out our resources, visit precept.org.